My family stood in a hotel lobby, watching a man in handcuffs get walked past the flower arrangements they had dressed up for, and I was 60 feet in the air, holding my husband's hand, looking at nothing but open sky. But let me back up. My name is Simone, I am 28 years old, and I am a forensic accountant. I track money for a living. I follow where it goes, why it moves, and what it leaves behind when it disappears. And the one thing that career has taught me with absolute certainty is that nothing hidden stays hidden forever. Not money, not lies, not the truth about who people actually are when the pressure finally arrives. My fiancé, Nate, coached varsity baseball at a high school 40 minutes outside of Nashville. He drove a 7-year-old pickup truck. He wore the same broken-in cap almost every day of the week. He was brilliant and patient and the most quietly self-assured person I had ever met. What my family saw when they looked at him was a man going nowhere. What I knew, what no one else at that Thanksgiving table knew, was that Nate had spent the past 5 years building a sports data analytics company from a side project into a platform used by teams across 4 major leagues. The IPO paperwork had already been filed. The valuation was $1.8 billion. He simply had not told anyone yet. That was Nate. He never led with the thing that would have impressed people. He just let the work exist. My family had only ever led with impressions. My mother introduces herself by her neighborhood. My father evaluates every man he meets by what car is sitting in the driveway. And my sister, my younger sister, who had grown up being told she was exceptional at every turn, had recently gotten engaged to a real estate developer named Grant. Grant wore custom suits to backyard cookouts. He had a habit of mentioning the price of things the way other people mention the weather. My parents practically fell over themselves every time he walked into a room. The Thanksgiving where everything first broke open, I had just told my family that Nate and I had set a date, May 3rd. We wanted something intimate. The ceremony would be at the property belonging to Nate's family, a piece of land out the city that he had described simply as a farmhouse. My mother set down her fork like I had said something in a foreign language. A farmhouse, she said. My sister smiled at Grant across the table. Grant leaned back in his chair and said something about how Rustic was having a moment, which was somehow worse than if he had just laughed. My father turned to Nate and asked, in that particular tone that sounds like concern but is actually just condescension wearing a more comfortable coat, whether he had thought about his long-term plans. Whether coaching high school ball was something he intended to do indefinitely. Nate told him he was comfortable with where things were headed. My father nodded slowly the way he does when he has already made up his mind and is simply waiting for the conversation to end. Then my sister cleared her throat. She said she had news of her own. She and Grant had officially booked the grand ballroom at the Pinnacle Hotel downtown for their engagement party. The same weekend as my wedding. She said it so smoothly, so casually, that it took me a full moment to register what she had done. I asked if she had done it on purpose. My mother jumped in before she could answer. She said Grant had already put down a non-refundable deposit, that these things had to work around his schedule, and that I needed to stop making everything about myself. Then she looked at Nate and back at me and said words I will remember until the day I die. She said, Simone, a ballroom is a ballroom. A farmhouse is a farmhouse. Some of us have an image to protect. Nate put his hand over mine under the table. He did not look angry. He looked like a man who knows exactly how a story ends and has decided not to rush the middle. We left after dessert. In the car I told him they were going to humiliate themselves, that I almost felt sorry for them. He just smiled at the road and said almost. Before I keep going, drop your city in the comments. I want to know who is listening. And if someone in your life has ever made you feel like you needed to shrink so they could feel bigger, like and subscribe, because this one is for you. The weeks leading up to May 3rd were a slow and deliberate unraveling. My sister turned her engagement party into a social media event. She posted photos of the venue, the florist, the custom invitations. Every caption had a quiet dig in it, things about celebrating yourself properly, about love deserving to be honored in a way that reflects who you really are. She never tagged me directly, she never had to. My extended family picked a side without being asked. My aunt sent me a long text about how hard it was to explain to people that my fiancé was a baseball coach. My cousin said Nate seemed sweet but directionless. Someone I had not spoken to in 3 years left a comment under one of my sister's posts saying she could not wait to celebrate real love done right. I documented every message, screenshotted every comment, saved every text. Forensic accountants keep receipts. It is not a personality trait, it is a reflex. Then my mother called about the brooch. My grandmother had left me her vintage brooch, an antique piece with a rose-cut center stone and small diamonds set along the outer edge. She had put it in her will specifically because she understood exactly how my mother operated. That brooch was the one thing in my childhood that had ever been given to me directly, without strings, without revision. My mother wanted it for my sister's engagement photos. She said it would look beautiful against the neckline of her gown. She said it was just sitting in a box and asked if I was really going to let sentiment get in the way of my sister's moment. I told her I would bring over the box. 3 weeks earlier, I had taken the brooch to a jeweler I trusted and asked her to remove the center stone and reset it into my wedding band. The jeweler called it a stunning transfer. I called it mine. I dropped the box at my parents' house while no one was home, left it on the kitchen counter, then I waited. My sister called that same evening. She said the box was empty. I told her the box contained exactly what I had promised, the brooch, which now lived on my left hand. I had simply had it redesigned. The stone was legally mine, had always been legally mine, and she was welcome to come to my wedding on May 3rd and see it if she wanted. She hung up. My mother called 40 seconds later. She said I was selfish and calculating and deliberately cruel. I told her that a forensic accountant does not steal. She traces, and everything about that brooch traced directly back to me. Grant texted me the following morning. He said he had been patient and that I had forced his hand. He told me he had personally called members of my extended family and offered to cover their travel and hotel rooms to attend the engagement party. He said I would be standing at that farmhouse alone. I forwarded the text to Nate. Nate called me back in 10 minutes, and he was almost laughing. He said Grant just cleared the room for us, and I want you to think about what he spent to do us that favor. I thought about it, I smiled. I also thought about something else. 6 months earlier, while running a background search for a client, I had come across an SEC filing that named several limited liability companies connected to a real estate developer in Tennessee. The filing described a pattern of falsified appraisals used to secure inflated loans, and investor funds being diverted to cover construction shortfalls on properties that were nowhere near what they had been represented to be. A developer who wore custom suits to backyard cookouts. A man my entire family thought was the most impressive person in any room he entered. I had kept that document, filed it carefully, the way you keep something you know you will eventually need. May 3rd arrived faster than I was ready for and quieter than I expected. I woke up early. The property that Nate's family had held for 3 generations was not a farmhouse. It was 240 acres of rolling Tennessee land with a restored main house, a working orchard, and a converted barn that had been redesigned to seat 400 people in what I can only describe as quiet, genuine beauty. Nate had spent 2 years working on it with architects and landscape designers. He had kept it off every public listing because he was not interested in impressing strangers. He was interested in building something real. By 8 in the morning, the private road to the property was lined with discreet vehicles. The guests stepping out were not loud or flashy. They were engineers, founders, investors, attorneys, people who had known Nate for years and had watched him build something extraordinary from a side project into a company that had officially gone public at the opening bell that morning. The stock climbed 41% before 11 o'clock. A journalist from a major financial publication who was covering the IPO had asked the week prior if he could attend the wedding. Nate had said yes. I stood in front of the mirror in the upstairs room of the main house and thought about my grandmother. I thought about the woman who had sat with me at her kitchen table when I was 9 and told me very quietly that the loudest people in any room are usually the most afraid. I looked at the center stone of my wedding band catching the morning light. I felt her with me. Across town, the Pinnacle Hotel's ballroom was supposed to be the most glamorous event of the spring. Grant arrived at the hotel early and found the event manager waiting for him in the lobby with a polite but firm expression. The final balance on the booking, $64,000, had declined on every card he presented. The event manager explained that the hotel required full payment before any setup could begin. Grant made phone calls. He paced the lobby. He sweated through his jacket. The calls went to voicemail because the people who managed his finances had stopped answering 2 days earlier. Around the same time, federal investigators had begun the process of freezing his accounts in connection with a mortgage fraud review spanning 7 properties across 3 counties. My family had already arrived in their formal clothes. My mother was in the lobby. My aunt was with her. My cousin had driven 2.5 hours after Grant had covered travel costs that were now, it turned out, purchased with money that did not legally belong to him. The hotel did not lower the projection screens. The kitchen did not begin service. The flower arrangements sat in storage, still boxed. By 11, 2 agents from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit walked through the front doors of the Pinnacle Hotel and asked for Grant by name. My mother watched from across the lobby. My sister stepped out of the elevator in her gown at exactly that moment. The agents were professional and quiet and efficient. They informed Grant that he was under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy in connection with a scheme involving falsified real estate documents and misappropriated investor funds. They told him he had the right to remain silent. My sister's voice echoed through a hotel lobby that would never host her engagement party. My family stood there in their formal wear, in a hotel they could no longer get into, watching the man they had chosen over me get walked to a federal vehicle. While 240 acres away, a string quartet was playing, and a photographer was capturing the moment Nate and I said our vows, and a journalist was quietly noting that the groom had just closed one of the most unexpected IPOs of the year. Someone in that lobby had a news alert open on their phone. The headline read, "Tennessee founder celebrates 1.8B IPO with private ceremony." The photo that ran with it was taken by the journalist Nate had invited as a guest. It showed the two of us under an arch of white flowers, both laughing at something the officiant had just said. You could see the property behind us. You could see the scale of it. You could see exactly what my farmhouse wedding actually was. My mother stared at that photograph. Then she found my number and called it. When I did not answer, she texted. When the text did not deliver, she cycled through every number she had for anyone who might reach me. I was already in the air. The helicopter that lifted us from the back of the property was small and fast, and the windows were wide. I watched the land fall away below us, the orchard, the barn, the long private road with its rows of old oak trees. I watched until everything was too small to make out. My phone, sitting in my lap, showed a text from an unknown number. It read, "Simone, sweetheart, we are so proud of you. Can we come by to celebrate?" I read it once. I had spent 28 years trying to be enough for people who had decided before I walked into any room that I would not be. I had explained myself and justified myself and made myself smaller so they could feel more comfortable with their own choices. I had done all of that, and it had not changed a single thing. I typed 2 words. Too late. I blocked the number. Then I set the phone face down in my bag, took my husband's hand and looked out at the sky. It was blue and wide and entirely ours. Here is the thing I want you to hold on to if you take anything from this. Some people will only recognize your value once someone else has already paid full price for it. Do not spend your life waiting for those people. Do not cancel your plans for those people. Do not hand them things that were never meant for them just because they are family. The family you deserve will not require you to shrink to fit into their comfort. Mine was already holding my hand at 30,000 feet. Thank you for being here. If you have ever had to choose yourself over people who should have chosen you, leave it in the comments. You are not doing this alone. Like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.